I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone you've known for years, someone you love, someone you trust completely, and felt, for just 1 second, that you were looking at a stranger? Not because they changed their hair, not because they said something unexpected, but because something behind their eyes was different. Like the person you knew was still in there somewhere, but something else had moved in beside them and was looking out through the same eyes, using the same face, wearing them. My name is Ryan. 2 of my friends are gone, Marcus and Carlos. Something came to our door at 2:53 a.m. and used Marcus's voice to ask us to let it in. We didn't open the door. But here's the thing about that night that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. When the voice outside changed, when it stopped sounding like Marcus and started sounding like something wearing Marcus, I looked around the room at my 7 remaining friends, and one of them wasn't looking at the door. Everyone else in that room was staring at the door, frozen, terrified. But one of them was looking at me, just watching me, with an expression I had never seen on that face before. It took me 6 more days to understand what that meant. By then, it was too late. Tuesday morning, March 26th. We had survived the night. That's genuinely how it felt, survival. Like we had made it through something that had every intention of ending us and had failed, at least for now, at least until 2:53 the next morning. At sunrise, Jake made coffee. I don't know why that detail stays with me, maybe because it was so aggressively normal. The coffee maker gurgling, the smell filling the apartment, 8 destroyed human beings sitting on the floor, wrapped in blankets, holding mugs. Normal things. We needed normal things, desperately. Nobody talked about the voice at the door. Nobody mentioned the way it had changed at the end, that wrong frequency underneath the familiar words. Nobody mentioned the phone call. Ryan, it's been inside the whole time. We just drank coffee and didn't look at each other. It was Danny who spoke first. Danny, who was always loud, always performing, always filling silence with noise. Danny spoke in a voice so quiet, I almost didn't hear him. We have to go to the police, he said. Today, all of us, together, we tell them everything. Slow nods around the room. Marcus is already reported missing, Jake said. I can add the stuff about last night, the voice, they won't believe us, Mia said. They don't have to believe us. We just have to be on record. More silence. And then I said what everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to say. One of us needs to check on Danny and Priya's roof, the pigeon thing. Everyone looked at the pigeon's arrangement Danny had described. 3 carcasses, perfectly triangular, picked clean. Danny nodded slowly. I already went back up this morning, before I came here. And? He wrapped both hands around his mug. There were 9 of them this time, he said quietly. All in a circle, still warm. We went to the police station that afternoon, all 8 of us. The detective assigned to Marcus's case was a man named Reyes, mid-50s, tired eyes that had seen too much of everything. He listened to us with the careful patience of someone who had learned not to react to anything. We told him about the footprints in the forest, the photo on Marcus's phone, Carlos disappearing, the footprints outside Mia's building, the voice at the door. He wrote things down. He asked calm, measured questions. And when we were done, he leaned back in his chair and looked at us with those exhausted eyes and said, I understand you've all been through a traumatic experience. Losing 2 friends in 48 hours is devastating. The mind does things under that kind of stress. It looks for patterns. It fills in gaps with what? I said. With footprints? You can't explain footprints, Mr. Ryan. I've been doing this for 27 years. People in crisis hear things, see things, interpret things in ways that feel absolutely real and absolutely. Show him the photo, Jake said. I took out my phone, pulled up the photo from Marcus's camera roll, slid it across the desk. Detective Reyes looked at it for a long time, longer than I expected. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Some small, quick thing that he immediately put away. He slid the phone back to me. Motion blur, he said. Night photography. The flash creates distortion. It's a tree. That's not a tree, I said. Mr. Ryan. Detective, I leaned forward. What was behind those eyes just now? When you looked at that photo, "What did you see?" He held my gaze for a moment. Then he looked down at his notepad. "I'll look into the Carlos situation," he said. "If there's no sign of him in 72 hours, we'll open a full investigation." We left. On the steps outside the station, Jake punched a concrete pillar so hard his knuckles bled. Nobody said anything. We just walked to our cars. And as I was getting into my car, I glanced back at the police station. Detective Reyes was standing at the window of his office, watching us leave. On his desk, still visible through the glass, my phone, still displaying Marcus's photo. He hadn't given it back. I drove back without it. I didn't realize until I was already home. That photo, the only physical evidence we had, was sitting on a detective's desk, and I never got it back. Wednesday, March 27th. This is where I need to slow down, because this is the part where things stopped being about something outside of us. This is the part where it got inside. I noticed it first. I want to be clear about that. I noticed it first, and I said nothing, and I have to live with that. Wednesday morning, Jake called a group meeting at his place again, just to check in, just to be together. We had collectively decided, without stating it explicitly, that nobody would be alone until this was resolved. Everyone showed up by 10 a.m., and when Danny walked in, something was wrong. Not dramatically wrong, not movie wrong, where you look at someone and immediately scream because they've clearly been possessed by a demon. Subtly wrong. The kind of wrong that makes you think maybe you're imagining it. Maybe you're just exhausted and scared and projecting. Danny walked in and sat in the corner. Danny never sat in corners. Danny always took the center of the room, always the most visible seat, the most social position. He sat in the corner, and he didn't say hello to anyone, and he looked at his hands. Priya sat next to him, touched his arm. He didn't react for a moment, and then he turned and looked at her and smiled and said good morning. Normal. Fine. She relaxed. But I had seen that pause, that half second where he didn't react to her touch, like he hadn't noticed her, like he was noticing her for the first time. I watched him through the whole meeting, the way he sat, completely still. Danny was never still. Danny tapped his foot, drummed his fingers, shifted in his seat, interrupted people. He was kinetic energy in human form, but now he sat completely still, and he watched. He watched each of us in turn, slow, steady attention moving from face to face around the room, like he was studying us, like he was learning us. After the meeting, I pulled Jake aside in the kitchen. "Something is wrong with Danny," I said quietly. Jake frowned. "He's traumatized. We all are. This is different. Jake, look at him." We both looked through the kitchen doorway. Danny was sitting with Priya now, his arm around her, laughing at something Tyler said. Completely normal, warm, present. Jake looked back at me. "Ryan," he said, "you need to sleep. You haven't slept in 3 days. Your brain is, I know what I saw. We're all seeing things. That's what happens when—" "The night at your apartment," I said. "When the voice was at the door. Everyone was looking at the door." Jake nodded. Danny wasn't. Jake said nothing. "He was looking at me," I said. "He was watching me. While that thing was talking outside your door, Danny was watching me." Jake stared at me. Then he looked back through the doorway at Danny, who chose that exact moment to look up and meet Jake's eyes and smile. A smile that reached his mouth perfectly, but arrived at his eyes half a second too late. I didn't sleep Wednesday night either. Thursday morning, Priya called me. Her voice was very controlled, the voice of someone who has decided to be calm because the alternative is not an option. "Ryan," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you noticed anything different about Danny?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "Last night," she said, "we were lying in bed. I thought he was asleep, and I was almost asleep, and I opened my eyes for a second, and he was sitting up in bed, in the dark, just sitting there completely upright." "And he was looking at the wall, just looking at the wall." I said his name, and he turned, and he said, "Sorry, couldn't sleep," and he lay back down. "Priya." "But Ryan," she said, "his eyes were open. He was looking at the wall. with his eyes open, but the way he turned when I said my name. She couldn't finish the sentence. I finished it for her. Like he heard you for the first time. Like he hadn't known you were there. Yes, she whispered. Thursday night, I made a decision. I was going to stay awake until 2:53 a.m., and I was going to watch Danny. I told nobody this plan. We were all at Jake's again, the informal agreement to stay together still holding. People drifted off one by one, exhaustion finally winning over fear. I positioned myself where I could see Danny without being obvious. A chair near the window, angled right, midnight. Danny was asleep on a mattress on the floor, Priya beside him, his breathing slow and even. 1 a.m., still sleeping. I was starting to feel stupid. Maybe Jake was right. Maybe I was sleep-deprived and paranoid and projecting. 2 a.m., my eyes were burning. I got up quietly, went to the kitchen, splashed cold water on my face, walked back into the living room. Danny was sitting up, completely upright, in the dark, facing the window. Priya was asleep beside him, undisturbed. I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched him. He didn't move. 2:15, 2:20, 2:30, sitting perfectly still, facing the window, not moving. 2:45. He turned his head, slowly, and looked directly at me. I don't know how he knew I was there. The kitchen was dark. I hadn't made a sound, but he turned and looked directly at me. And in the darkness, with only the faint city light coming through the curtains, he smiled. Not Danny's smile. Danny's smile was huge and immediate and involved his whole face. This was slow, deliberate, like something that had seen smiling before and was doing its best to replicate it. 2:53 a.m. His phone lit up on the floor beside him. He looked down at it, then back at me. Then he lay down, closed his eyes, and went still. I walked over to where his phone lay face up on the floor. The screen was still lit. A text message from an unknown number. 4 words. Did you find one? I took a photo of Danny's phone screen. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I pulled Jake into the bathroom and showed him the photo. He stared at it for a long time. Did you find one? He read quietly. What does that mean? I think, I said, and my voice was very steady because I'd been awake for so long that I'd gone past fear into something colder. I think it means that whatever is out there is looking for a way in, and I think it found one. Jake sat down on the edge of the bathtub. He put his face in his hands. What do we do? He said. His voice was muffled, broken. I don't know yet, I said, but we can't let Danny know we suspect him. And we cannot. Jake, listen to me. We cannot leave Priya alone with him. Jake looked up. His eyes were red. He nodded. We went back into the living room. Danny was awake, making coffee in the kitchen, humming quietly to himself. He turned when we walked in and smiled. That smile. Morning, guys, he said warmly. Coffee? And the thing that broke something inside me, the thing that I still can't fully process, was that it sounded exactly like Danny. Exactly. The warmth, the ease, the casual friendliness. If I hadn't seen what I saw, if I hadn't seen that text message, if I hadn't watched him sit upright in the dark for an hour, perfectly still, waiting, I would have believed it completely. That's what terrifies me most about what we were dealing with. Not that it was monstrous, but that it was so very, very good at being human. Friday afternoon, Jake and I were in the kitchen. Danny was in the living room with the others. And then Priya screamed. Not a scared scream, a pain scream. We ran. Priya was on the floor, her wrist bent at an angle that made my stomach turn over completely. She was crying, gasping, holding her arm. Danny was kneeling beside her. She fell, he said immediately, looking up at us, his face perfectly composed in concern. She tripped over the mattress and fell. Tyler helped Priya up. Jake called an ambulance. I looked at Danny. He was looking at Priya's face, at her pain, with that careful, studied attention, like he was learning what pain looked like from the outside, like he had never seen it before. In the ambulance, when it was just me and Priya, Danny had insisted on coming, but Jake had blocked him, made an excuse, kept him back. Priya grabbed my hand. Her wrist was splinted. Her face was white with pain. Ryan, she said, he didn't help me when I fell. He was right there. He was standing right next to me. And when I fell, he just watched. For how long? I asked. She looked at me with those blown-out, pain-filled eyes. Until he heard you coming, she whispered. I held her hand in that ambulance, and I thought about what Detective Reyes had said. The mind looks for patterns, and I thought, what if the pattern is this? Marcus, gone. Carlos, gone. What if it doesn't just take people? What if sometimes it keeps them? What if Danny is still in there somewhere, behind those eyes, watching us, trying to warn us, and something else is answering when we call his name. What do you do when the monster is wearing your friend's face and your friend is screaming inside it? That's part 3 of We Never Came Back. Priya's wrist was broken in 2 places. Danny visited her in the hospital that night. I wasn't there. She hasn't spoken about that visit to anyone. Not to Jake, not to me, not to the police. Part 4 is coming, and I need you to understand, from this point forward, nowhere is safe. Not outside, not inside, not even the people standing right next to you. Subscribe and look up from your phone for a second. Just make sure whoever is in the room with you is actually them.